Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to what looks like hundreds of people from all over the world. My name is Jose de Rosario. I am a consultant with Northern Sky Research. I will be your moderator for today. This webinar is part of the GVF webinar series. Our webinar today is Ground Segment, All Change for a New Satcoms Era. We are joined by a very distinguished group of panelists, starting with Dr. Vagan Shakiljan, President of Comtech SNT Commercial Group, followed by Dr. Honor Carabay, founder and CEO of Alcon Systems, Tony Taylor, Chairman and CEO, Global Invacom Group, and finally, Dr. Leslie Klein, President and CEO of Satcoms Satellite Systems. Just a bit of background, satellite communications ground segment has all too often been considered the less interesting non-identical twin to the satellites that we place in orbits. Launches and orbiting of spacecrafts are quote unquote sexy, and whereas outdoor and indoor units on Earth do not have the same visual impact, interest, and some would argue investment interest as well. However, all this is changing, and the industry has already coined the name New Ground to complement the now quite familiar term New Space. So with that background, and without further ado, I'd like to introduce the panel once again. Starting off with the very first question, can you please share your value proposition within the satellite industry, what your companies do, and where do you see things shaping up in the new space era? Let's start with Honor, please.
So thank you very much, Jose, having me here. As I said, I'm Honor, one of the co-founders and CEO of Alcon Systems. So we are in Germany and we develop a liquid crystal, I will name it LC-based phased array flat panel antennas to enable connectivity through NGSO satellites and 5G. So to come where we see ourselves, I would like to tell a bit about our product. So this is a phased array antenna, which is well-known phased arrays. It's a proven technology. However, you know, they are expensive and consume a lot of power. So that's why their usage is limited to certain high-end markets. At the same time, LC technology is also well known from the displays. So our innovative product is the combination of both. So this LC-based phased arrays and actually LC technology enables fully passive phased array antenna development because of its superior RF performance. You don't consume any power to steer the beam, and we can use well-established production line, display production line to reduce the production cost. So with this as Alcon, we focus on low cost and high volume markets. I mean, this is like enterprise, consumer, and land mobile markets. So I believe we play a key role for NGSO operators. They can open new markets. They can provide affordable services with our antennas. And the technologies like this becoming more and more important. Recently, we have seen that FCC approved I would say around another 60,000 second generation constellations, which will operate at V-band. So our technology is the only one whose performance gets better as the operating frequency increases. So the technology, as you mentioned at the beginning, the world industry and the ground segment is appreciated now. A lot of changes are happening, new services, new hardwares are needed, and we are very happy to be part of this.
Excellent, thank you. Leslie, let's go to you to Satcom, please.
Satcom is a company that's been in business 24 years, one of the early communication on the pause companies. We are publicly traded and a profitable company with over 8,500 antennas deployed in 106 countries. These are on-the-pause communication antennas that deliver high-speed internet over Ka, Ku, C, and X band. And we have a portfolio of about 27 different antenna models. And the company has, over the last 5 years, working with the University of Waterloo, have been developing a phased array electronically steered antenna and also developing the RFIC chipsets for these antennas in order to control the quality of the product and also reduce the power consumption and the cost. Our intention is to have these antennas deployed very much the same way as we are deploying communication on the pause antennas, but reduce the price of them make them lighter, make them transportable. And the company has already tested a 1,000 element array using a Telesat satellite. And we are in the process now of commercializing this product and testing also mobility of this product. We hope to have the product available for beta users sometimes early next year. And we expect to change the communication on the POS market with this new design that has been extensively lab tested and now in a production phase where we can actually build it and test it in a live environment over a satellite. So we plan to have a product that will be used for mobility, mainly on the ground, but nothing will stop it from being used in marine and aero environment by those companies that want to take it and commercialize it for their or specialized design of these satellite antenna panels that we will be manufacturing for their own specific uses. So we expect to use, this is a Ka-band antenna system, and we expect that it would be deployed on many GEO, LEO, MEO type of Ka-band services as soon as it's in full production. That's my brief introduction, Jose.
Great, thank you so much, Leslie. Vagan from Comtech, please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Jose. I'm very happy to be here today. My name is Vagan Shagildian. I represent Comtech. Probably Comtech doesn't need much introduction. It has been in the industry, one of the stalwarts in the industry for the last 50 years. Comtech is a publicly listed company as well. The stock is traded on the NASDAQ exchange. It's a $700 million company, headquartered out of New York. So we are engaged in public safety through our next generation 911 product lines, and also satellite communications and defense markets, which is the part of Comtech that I represent today. More specifically, I represent Comtech S&T, or Satellite Network Technologies. This is a group that was known for years and years as it's basically a combination of what was then Comtech EF Data, the company manufacturing modems and solid-state power amplifiers, block-up converters, and Satcom Technologies, which is obviously a high-power amplifier company. And also we have several other product lines in our portfolio, in our group, S&T group, such as UHP, Advanced VSAT product line, Memotech network optimization product line. We have also system on the chip and the fabless semiconductor units, and I will not go into further details, but essentially what we do, right? So what we bring to the table in the context of this discussion is technology excellence across a broad spectrum of technologies and products. Just to segue to some of the comments made by Honor and Leslie, we certainly are a significant player in the LEO MEO market, in particular in the context of the gateways. So we try to be at the cutting edge of whatever technology we engage in, and quite successfully. Like if we're talking about modems, then obviously we have been a supplier of record to the O3B systems for many years now. We're just in the process of releasing a new 2.6 gigabit per second modem, which will be the fastest modem on the market. Also equipped for to handle satellite handoffs and things that are peculiar in the context of LEO MEO. And as far as our RF product lines are concerned, again, we are a supplier to a number of constellations, and some of which I'm not at liberty to mention, but these are the big names that everyone heard about. And so like with Honor, we also, our technology advantage becomes greater as far as our RF product line is concerned as the frequency are going up. We have the greatest installed base of Q and V band amplifiers. I think we totally dominate that. I think as far as installed base historically, we have 90% of that market segment, and I'm very excited about the new Q and V band in particular filings. So clearly there's a new era opening up, new frequency bands, new complexities, of networking as well. We're very happy to be part of that kind of crest wave of new technologies and new systems going forward. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, finally, Tony from Global Invacom Group, please.
Okay, hi, my name's Tony Taylor from Global Invacom Group. We're in RF electronics, mainly transceivers from 2.5 watt up to 20 watts, as well as the discrete versions of those, and parabolic antennas, metal and composite. We probably provide equipment to almost everybody that's talking today on this panel.
Excellent, great.
Sure.
All right, so a good mix of products, and you've outlined some of the key technological parameters and market signals going forward. So when we look at, you mentioned MEO, LEO, next generation capabilities. So in the introduction and the description of this webinar, the space segment seems to be taking off the ground, literally. We have lots of satellites being deployed, complicated systems, onboard processing, et cetera, et cetera. Is the ground system there as well? Are we, is the ground equipment on pace in terms of developments with the space segment? Onur, what do you think?
I think that the ground segment is, I would say, they will achieve, let's say, the target at the same time. Yeah. So this is how I can say, because from our perspective, the antenna manufacturer perspective, when I try to categorize our discussion, let's say, with the potential customers, I can tell 3 phases. Initially, it was like that. The request we were getting is a cheaper dish in a platform. So I can maybe name it like that. So I have a dish antenna, parabolic antenna, it's great, performance is nice, but it is, I don't know, bulky, or total cost of ownership is an issue for the upcoming NGSO satellite. So can you achieve the same performance on a platform, and it should be the cheaper? So that was the, I would say, the first kind of reaction we were getting. Of course, this is possible, but it always comes with its own cost. Yeah. So in the second phase, actually, we were discussing with the customers the trade-offs. So we started to define the trade-offs. I can achieve all those, but are you okay with this and that kind of, I don't know, specifications? That could be performance, that could be size, cost, power consumption, so anything you can imagine. So today we are actually in the, I believe, the right phase. Now we are deciding trade-offs together with the customers, the operators. And the most of the, I mean, there are some services, as you know, some test services or even commercial services on the MEO side, but most of them will be deployed in the 23, 24 and afterwards. So with that, actually, once we are also seeing that they are defining their trade-offs, actually, this also gives us a clear guidance what kind of developments or what kind of specifications we should achieve. So all are possible, but you have to achieve this, and you have to make, let's say, the productization phase. As Leslie mentioned, a lot of laboratory prototypes, a lot of testing that is done. But to bring into the product level, you have to take your final decisions, and this is what's happening right now. And once we agreed, once we go hand in hand with the customers, the grant segment from our perspective, it will be there.
Okay, so your ground equipment is there, and you're talking about maybe a price being the issue. Is that correct?
That is, for example, one of the issues. Yeah. So especially also from the antenna side, you know, everybody says that flat panel antennas. This is discussed in the last 2 decades. We couldn't see whatever the people are promised, which is partly true. But the issue there was, I mean, I am an engineer by education, so you can achieve actually more or less everything what you want to do on this on the antenna side. But it comes with its own cost, and understanding customer needs to define the trade-offs together with the customer. This is extremely important. And in the past, we achieved this successfully. There is let's say one name, they came up with some specifications. We said we can do this, but if I provide you such a specifications, that will be my cost. And they changed their mindset completely.
Okay, excellent. So do you agree with that, Leslie?
I agree largely with Onur on the situation of what's happening on the ground compared to in space. I think everybody's focusing on the space segment. Very few people are actually considering how important it is that the ground segment, works hand in hand with the launch of the satellites. And I think that I agree with Onur that at some point the two will merge. At the moment, I think there's far more satellites being launched than there is ground equipment available to operate on them. But the lab process is coming out into a commercialization, and some of these constellations are going to be delayed, like the Telesat one has been now delayed about 10 months. And I think that many of the ground segment antennas will be available in time to meet up with the requirements from the satellites constellations for providing relatively low cost or low cost antenna systems, phased array antenna systems to service them. I think the price will always be an issue until there is a volume of these antennas manufactured hopefully in the hundreds of thousands, if not into the millions, because everything is volume driven. So similarly to the cell phone market and many other markets where volume dictates the price, we are still far away from having an antenna system that will be as cost effective as a parabolic antenna, but we will get there. It will take some time, and the early adapters will make sure that the antennas that are being in the lab today and being tested today will come out and will be reasonably priced in large volumes and operate pretty much in a similar fashion as parabolic antennas, with a lot of advantages that these antennas will offer.
Okay. The holy grail in terms of price point seemed to be a $300 per unit terminal for broadband access, the cheapest terminal there is, in order to attack the consumer broadband market. Are we going to get there, in your opinion, Leslie?
I don't think anytime soon, not with phased array antennas. But I think that somewhere in the $1,500 to $2,000 range, that will be possible within a short period of time, depending on the volume. But in our model, we are looking at in motion antennas. So those don't have to be $1,500 or $2,000. I mean, it would be great if they were, but in order to put something of that complexity together, the price will have to be significantly higher. Satcom is patented a number of new technologies in the passive component area, and so those passive components cost very little compared to active phase shifters and active components, and also the ones that we patented, they generate very little power. So maybe a hybrid solution with a combination of a passive and an active element at some point would make it possible to reduce the cost dramatically in large volumes for consumer use. For commercial use, I think the antenna prices that we are planning to launch will be adequate, because they would be similar to communication on the pause antenna costs with significant advantages.
Okay. Bagan, do you agree with what's been said so far?
These are good comments. What I would like to add to this, I think the comments so far have been revolving around the remote terminals, user terminals, and obviously there is a lot of interest in kind of market elasticity, and the holy grail is kind of, as you say, Jose, a $300 terminal or whatever it may be, so that we can tackle the almost kind of boundless consumer broadband market. So we at Comtech have been traditionally focused on the gateways. I probably the only panelist whose interest, not exclusively, but is focused on the infrastructure and gateways. So I would like to say a few words about that, if I may. So
yes,
essentially, one of the challenges, because the original question was about how far, if the ground infrastructure is lagging behind the satellite segment at all, And a lot of progress has been made already. One of the challenges, however, that the ground infrastructure manufacturers such as Comtech are facing is the sheer volume, the actual capacity that is required in order to roll out and accommodate and the cadence of not just satellite launches, but also deploying those gateways, because okay, it is possible to manufacture 1, 2, 3 at the pace that we have been used to when we were dealing with the geostationary satellites. Now we're talking for an average constellation, hundreds of gateways around the world. And so that is something that we have been paying a lot of attention to due to the requirements that we're facing on some of the programs that we're a party to. So that's why we're investing in new production capabilities. We're building a new plant in Basingstoke in England, where we'll be manufacturing gateway antennas with XY mounts. We are building a new factory, kind of state-of-the-art factory in Chandler, Arizona as well. We'll be manufacturing amplifiers and modems for those needs, and not only. So that's one. So the challenge of production capacity. So we're definitely in a productization stage and investing heavily in that area. The second challenge that I would mention in here is of course higher frequency bands. And we're talking about V-band, Q-band, and we should also be talking about optical. We're looking at all of those bands and heavily investing in RF technology and various other enabling technologies that will deal with those bands in the context of higher power amplifiers. And the third challenge, which is worth mentioning, I would say it's the dominant trend that we see for virtualization of ground infrastructure. Right. Again, there is a lot of talk about it. Different people have different understandings of what it actually means. This is a key area where we are developing some groundbreaking technologies, both in terms of digital IF, but also implementing various waveforms and other signal processing elements running on general purpose servers and a kind of software-defined environment. So I think, so therefore, to sum up, a lot of progress is being made. A lot of initiatives are already in productization stage, but a lot still remains to be done, in particular in the field of virtualization.
Okay, just very quickly, 30 seconds follow-up. So the production and the investments that you're making today, is that based on addressing a backlog, a current order, or in that anticipation of what's to come?
Well, we have some of the orders. Again, I cannot talk about the specifics, but we have some development orders or initial phase orders. We're in the various advanced processes of, in some cases, these are real orders. In some cases, these are RFPs and RFQs. In other cases, it's kind of strategic investment based on the trends that we're seeing, market trends that we're seeing in the industry.
Great. All right. Finally, Tony, your view, are we there yet in terms of ground terminals catching up with space segment?
No, I think there's a big problem here. We're launching all these satellites and we don't have a ground solution at the right price. We need to open up this market and allow people who don't have the cash necessarily to pay for expensive solutions to access broadband technology or high-speed internet now. And that's what we're going to be working on. You may have seen that we just got an ESA grant to build a terminal for Mathera, at least initially. And we're going to be aiming at those low hundreds of dollars. It'll be using more legacy technology, but it's a solution now, which I think is what the industry needs.
Great. All right. Well, that was just the first question, and we're 20 minutes into our discussion already. I invite the audience to please put your questions on the Q&A, and we'll get to them as soon as we can. So lots of interesting developments. There's risk-taking, there's addressing backlog, there's a challenge, as Vagan and Tony have said, but you're doing your best to keep up. Are the customers asking for the same things? So if we look at the four major players, for instance, SpaceX, Kuiper, Telesat, OneWeb, and then we have software-defined networks on geo, software-defined satellites. People are now looking not just on the infrastructure, but the applications. They're looking at artificial intelligence, NFV as outlined before, cloud computing, data analytics, all this, right? So you have the infrastructure, you have the equipment, and then you have the applications. How do you address all this now so that you do monetize and implement what the constellations want to do? Onur, let's start with you, please.
I mean, this is a good point, and this is a kind of, let's say, the also increases the great flexibility, as well as this also something also increase the complexity. So we try to address this, I would say, in two perspectives. The first is, of course, we have to adapt our technology, our product. So from that point, I believe we are in a good position because it's a phased array. Since 1940s, this technology is known, the know-how is available widely. So the thing we have to do is how we can re-implement those by using liquid crystal technology. It's not simple, it's not given, but at least we don't have to invent the things from scratch. So, but for me, more important is, as I tried to explain in the previous question, understanding the customer needs, understanding the use cases, and to do the trade-offs. This is the most important, because at the end, you can have a lot of software-defined stuff in your hardware, but you have an hardware at the end of the day. So there are some features that your antenna, for me, that our antenna has, and those are the things that have to be defined and agree. You may have some flexibility. You can play with some, let's say, features, but what kind of flexibility is needed? Those have to be agreed by the customer. So also, as being a startup, it's very important for us to position ourselves into let's say, the use cases or for the markets which provides exponential growth rate. So this is actually what we are doing. Yeah. So understanding the let's say the customer needs, choosing the right application for our technology, and choosing the right partners, and then come up with the desired solution.
Great. All right, Leslie, what do you think?
I think we have a very simple formula here. We follow what the customers want, and we have been doing it for 24 years. Essentially, they wanted the ability to move and have internet access on the POS because there was nothing available, on the vehicles that would allow you to move at the same time as transmitting and receiving information from a vehicle. And so on the POS requirement became quite popular. There is, as I mentioned, thousands of antennas in the field using specifically parabolic antenna technology, off-the-shelf modems, and a very simple formula to provide the customer what they want. And with the advent of low Earth orbit satellites, MEOs and LEOs, the parabolic antenna solution will no longer work, and you won't be able to even use an on-the-pause type of a solution because the satellites are constantly moving. So we had to come up with a solution that will satisfy customers' needs who will want to be able to operate on a low Earth orbit satellite and either in a stationary position or in an in-motion position access the satellites. And so the technology that we foresaw 5 years ago has materialized. And so we need to fill the requirement for customers that want to be able to utilize these services. And the only way to do it is really with some sort of a phased array antenna that would be able to track multiple satellites simultaneously and deliver a large amount of data into a vehicle or an aircraft or a ship that is moving at the same time. So the technology really was driven by customers' demands and by others who saw these constellations as a possible large opportunity. And of course, the consumer aspect of it is one segment of it. The commercial aspect of it is one segment of it. The consumer segment of it is extremely large, and it will be very, very competitive. And so we always, we believe that we can address the consumer market, the commercial market very successfully, and we leave the consumer portion of it to the big boys who are going to try to subsidize heavily the solutions. on these satellites, similar to Satlink and Starlink, and deliver solutions to consumers. We will stick to the commercial market to start with, and obviously we are continuing to develop new technologies, trying to reduce the cost so that the cost could be then applied to a consumer model. But for now, we are just sticking with the commercial market, and we believe that there will be a great demand for this type of a solution from these constellations.
Great. All right. Thank you. Vagan, what is your viewpoint?
Yes. Well, the question, if we tackle this point directly, so all the players asking for the same thing. So notice that we on this panel we represent kind of equipment vendors and essentially solution providers. All of us, of course, we're talking to dozens of service providers and satellite operators and so on. So to answer your question, Jose, yes, there is a lot of similarities, across this range of requirements that we're seeing on a daily basis. And so these similarities include, in no particular order, moving to higher and higher frequency bands, as several of us mentioned in this conversation, right, going to V-band, Q-band, optical, and so forth. Higher throughputs, that's a recurring theme, clearly. I mean, we are at the stage where feeder links require gigabits of capacity for those constellations that use those feeder links. We're seeing user terminals requiring in excess of 100 megabit of throughput, right, in one direction. And of course, the technology is there to provide that. We're in the process of launching our new Comtech Elevate platform for VSAT networking, and the user terminal can deliver just short of 200 megabit per second return, and a very small and low cost modem or satellite router, which is incredible by standards of yesterday, but it's possible now. Then there is quality of service, of course, and very stringent requirements. Some of those are based on Metro Ethernet standards. And also the customers, talking of standards, absolutely are requiring elements of standardization, open interfaces, interoperability between equipment from different vendors. A lot of customers are looking for initiatives similar to Open RAN in mobile cellular world. Trying to, in a way, reduce dependency on different vendors and proprietary technologies, if you will. So these are the trends that we're seeing across the board from multiple customers.
Okay, Tony.
I'm going to steal from Leslie here. I mean, it's all about listening to the customers and what they require. And what SpaceX has done with their plug-in and point at the sky is to change ground equipment and the way ground equipment is going to work. So even the geo guys are asking for those kind of things right now to be able to repoint to save money. It's an interesting time. Things are changing phenomenally quickly, but I still come back to the key point: price point, price point, price point. Let's not forget that if we can't get the price point right, we're not going to get the volume to justify all of the investment that's been put into this technology.
Great. All right. Well, we have questions from the audience coming in already. So 2 questions from Martin Coleman. He states that surely there will be legacy systems that will continue and will need to be supported in parallel with these new systems. So comments on that, please. And as a follow-up from Martin as well, so what is new and what is changing? So we have legacy systems. How do you support that with the new initiatives? And what is new and what is changing over the landscape? Let's start with Anur, please.
For me, it's again comes to the use case. Yeah. So yes, there are these kind of services, and from the antenna side, for example, now we see a lot of the, let's say, multi-beam developments, as Leslie mentioned, with the phased array antennas, you can achieve these kind of the services. Yeah. So this is doable, but when I mean, on top of that, I believe, especially in the future, we will be, or the satellite industry will be, let's say, working more and more with the 5G infrastructure. So actually, this is because the second part of the question, where we are. So this is where we are focusing on. We believe combination of the Satcom infrastructure and together with the 5G infrastructure, they provide the highest reliable connectivity and lowest cost. if you look the whole picture. So from my side, although I can do other things, this is where we are focusing on, and that is also, as Tony mentioned, or other the colleagues mentioned here, going into the consumer market is the way how you can achieve the mass market. So SpaceX actually shown this in the almost a year time. They achieve more than 100,000 users, and this is just a starting. I believe the number will increase even more. The market, the needs, where we go after, it's really at the end of the day, from my side, it depends on the business case, the overall business case.
And the business case is the same, or is it changing with these new innovations taking place?
It is changing for sure, and I expect to see more. I mean, some new emerging the business models. For example, land mobile. As I said, we are working on the antenna, two products. So one is 5G, the other one is Satcom. They are going in parallel at the moment, but they will merge, because I believe in the future use cases like land mobile require connectivity, seamless connectivity through Satcom and 5G. So Satcom, because of NGSO, the latency, it will be compatible with the 5G networks. But the Satcom is an issue in the city center, but they have really good offerings outside the city. So the OPEX and CAPEX is actually will be much less the 5G millimeter wave, let's say, base station installation. So okay. I believe this will merge, and we already see some initial, let's say, the partnerships. Let me put it this way: British Telecom, OneWeb, or Verizon and Amazon, for example. Initially, they start to bring the connectivity to rural areas, but I believe this kind of partnership will be needed and will be very important to provide a reliable connectivity for land mobile case.
Okay, I'll jump to Vagan. Your Comtech is a big backhaul player. Onur mentioned 5G, and I think the telco market is a golden opportunity that people are, and a lot of companies are going after. So what's going to be the same, because there's a huge installed base for wireless backhaul, and what's going to be different, and how do you mesh the two?
Yes. Well, let me try, Jose, and address the more general point, the question that was that came from Morgan Coleman, if I'm not mistaken, about those legacy systems and how they're going to coexist. I think we saw an example of that. First of all, clearly the future systems are not just limited to those kind of exciting LEO and MEO constellations, as excited as we may be about those hundreds of satellites, if not thousands, basically traversing the skyline. But obviously the GEO satellites also very, very significant play remains there, new platforms and such as Intelsat Epic and others, and its next generation and so forth. We're talking about VHTS, Super VHTS, or whatever the acronym is. So obviously the GEO constellations will continue playing a very significant role in our industry going forward. So as far as a combination of different technology is concerned, I think there was recently a press release by Intelsat and OneWeb talking about essentially having a flexible, so I think the answer is like channel bonding is whereby you bond not only terrestrial path 5G and satellite link, but also satellite links over different constellations, and using some sort of least cost routing in order to route data in the most appropriate channel with a seamless handoff from one medium to another. So I think that is one way in which different technologies, whether state-of-the-art technologies or indeed some of them can be described as legacy, will interplay. So, okay. And then on your point about 5G backhaul, so I think we need to understand that 5G is definitely coming, and it's already here. I have it on my cell phone, proudly displayed 5G right here where I am now in Arizona. But I would like to point out that it will take a while for 5G to reach some of the regions in the world where currently satellite backhaul is prevalent for the reasons of remoteness and so on. And it will be quite some time before in those hard to reach areas of the world, 5G will become a reality. So I think 4G LTE has a lot of life and it left still. And of course, 5G is coming with all the edge computing and service orchestration. And those concepts of 5G, whether it's a kind of pure vanilla 5G or not, are already embedded into the thinking of a lot of service providers, including those constellations. So they're definitely borrowing a lot from the overall architecture and philosophy of 5G systems, both on the radio access network side and on the core network side.
Great, thank you. Leslie, what do you think? Legacy systems and what needs to change going forward?
Well, legacy systems are going to be around for a while because the technology, as Tony mentioned, is relatively inexpensive. You can put together a parabolic antenna with one of Tony's excellent transceivers that we use by the hundreds and our customers use by the thousands. And they do that because they work, and also the price range for them is very attractive. And we have been for the past 10 or 15 years providing cellular backhaul using these type of solutions to telcos around the world. We have over 400 antennas with SoftBank in Japan that are used in disaster management to provide instant cellular connectivity in case of a disaster. So those are all running on legacy systems, legacy KU, KA satellite services, and they will continue to be used. Of course, our goal is to ultimately provide the full mobility on those systems using a phased array antenna at the similar price that we are delivering today on the pause antenna, so that the customer would have a choice to either be able to run that system while traveling at full speed in a car, or having a on the pause solution. So legacy systems are going to be around, and the new phased array antennas will be able to operate on them similarly as they will be able to operate on LEO satellites. So it's in my opinion, this will continue for a long time until those legacy systems are replaced with LEOs, MEOs, and much higher throughput satellites. And the cellular mention of this whole solution is definitely something that we are also working on in the Q-band for HAPS, high altitude platform stations that will be delivering, I'm sure within a couple of years, direct connectivity from them using similar antennas that we are manufacturing down to cell phones. So they will be replacing cell towers by the thousands and make it possible to beam connectivity from a HAPS plane down to the ground into a cell phone without having cell towers on the ground. So I think there is a lot of interesting applications that are coming up, and they will all be focusing or using some of the new technology, but the legacy technology will still be around, and connectivity between satellite and cellular will become a permanent solution for sure.
Okay, great. So it's a very slow transition.
Yes.
Tony, do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely agree. All of us will be in some way probably involved in the data backhaul business, which is a big business for us all. I think that the legacy systems will be around for a long time. The infrastructure is there. Why not use it? The challenge for the telcos and for ourselves is to use the best system, be it LEO, MEO, or GEO, depending on the kind of data that's being transferred.
Okay.
May I add one thing, Jose?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I mean, just to close. So I completely agree with the colleagues here. The legacy systems will be there, but at the beginning you said the ground terminal, it was not sexy, quote unquote, but the situation is changing. So I think the legacy systems, because of the volumes there, they are quite low compared to what the LEOs can do. So as a couple of times we mentioned that for the ground terminals, reducing the cost is extremely important. So I think this will be kicked off, or this will be triggered by the, let's say, upcoming NGSO satellites, and the legacy systems will be, of course, get benefit out of that, but they will for sure not drive this one. So okay. That's why I think we should always find, all suppliers here, we should always find a way how to achieve the cost price of the upcoming NGO satellites, and then use it on the use for the legacy systems.
Okay, great. So so far we've talked about a lot of technology, which is great. It's really about ground terminals. But here's a question from Sandeep Sarkar, and question is, how do Satcom companies look into the Indian market after the new policy announcement recently? So that's a specific question, but I'd like to broaden it a bit. When you're looking at your markets, your customers are the service providers or the satellite operators, and then they deliver the service. So do you have specific market entry strategies on your own, like India and the rest of the globe, or do you rely on your customers, the operators, the service providers, to do that marketing and market penetration strategies for you? Let's start with Tony.
Customers, as we said before, so we're not the size of company that can go into India and penetrate that market very well, but we have lots of companies that we work with that can, and so we would generally work through our customers.
Okay. Vagan, same for Comtech?
Well, Comtech has been active. If the question is focused on India, the Comtech has been active in India for a long time, a long and proud history of engagement with the Indian industry, with the Indian kind of space research organization and others. So we're present in India. We have an office and operation support center in India as well. Yeah, we definitely have a strategy. We're very proud to be so intimately involved in some of the initiatives that are taking place in India, and will continue to be actively involved. Obviously, India is a huge market for Satcom technologies and equipment. It's at the forefront of the space industry in many regards. But of course, it's a unique country in its own right, and you cannot have the same strategy for all the countries and all the regions around the world. So in some cases, of course, we rely on partners. Customers take the lead in smaller countries, but we definitely make sure that we have direct representation in major markets like India and some other countries of that stature.
Okay, Leslie?
I can say that we have been in India for at least 10 years. Not directly. We have a business model where we through resellers, we operate in 106 countries. We would obviously not be able to be in those countries without the resellers. So our model is we have about 600 active integrators and resellers, and we never sell directly to end users. So the model is to provide the equipment to the reseller, who will activate it, install it, support it, maintain it, and generate revenue with the equipment for himself. So it's a very lucrative proposition from their standpoint, and from our standpoint is also a very, very good solution, because it allows us to instantly operate in some of these countries like India, where we have over 100 systems with the Indian Army alone for delivering communication on the Kashmir border, where the Indian Army is deployed periodically, and they having issues, and our equipment operates in -40-degree temperatures there, and they're very happy with the performance of the antenna system. Now, the problem with India is that you can only sell satellite equipment similar to what we manufacture to the Indian government. There's no opportunity to sell satellite equipment at the moment to commercial or consumer users in India. And I hope that will change, because I did an analysis of mobile banking, for example, which is fairly large for our customer base. We have probably 500 or more mobile banks around the world. These are mobile ATM machines that deliver cash in remote areas of the world, and there could be up to 25 or 50,000 or more mobile bank opportunities in India alone, but it's not allowed because the Indian government controls the satellite market, and until they loosen it up and allow commercial use other than government use, then the Indian market will remain pretty small in comparison to its size and the opportunities that there are there.
Okay. And finally, Onur, on market penetration and targeting specific countries like India?
I mean, similar to other colleagues, it's through the customers. So our customers are operators, are integrators, or their local partners. So this is how we go into those markets.
Great. All right. We have another question here by an anonymous attendee. He or she asks, what do you consider will happen if the mega constellations planning to compete to provide low latency internet fail to achieve their target market share and are thus unable to satisfy their investors' ROI demand? So what happens to the industry in general, and what happens to ground equipment value proposition specifically? Tony, let's start off with you, please.
Probably do what's happened with last generation low Earth orbit solutions, and somebody will buy them up on cents in the dollar and make money out of them. So I think whatever happens once the infrastructure is there or has begun to be there, it's an investment that people will jump on. It may take a couple of generations. We've seen that with a couple of companies, Iridium, for example, and OneWeb. So yeah, I don't think they'll disappear. I think the demand is there and the need is there for high speed. I think primarily for military applications, autonomous vehicles, gambling, and stockbroking. And those needs need to be satisfied. So the market will prevail.
We're talking about launching, at last count, I think about 40,000 satellites. So even if they don't close the business case, you said that somebody will snatch them up and make a business out of it. So those 40,000 satellites and counting will not be deorbited. They will be launched and stay afloat.
That will be my view at this point in time. And I say, that's what's happened in the past, as I say, with Iridium and O3B. So sorry, OneWeb. I'm confusing the two, but you know what I mean.
Right. Okay. Leslie, do you agree?
Yeah, I agree completely. I mean, the assets that will be deployed, somebody would have spent billions of dollars for them, and if they run out of gas, the companies run out of gas, they'll go bankrupt. Somebody will buy the assets, and just like they did with Iridium, they bought it for $20 million, something that cost Motorola, I think, $3.5 billion. So it was a hell of a good deal for the government. I think the U.S. government bought it for virtually nothing. And I think just like in any business, if the business that somebody has spent not only on the business but also on antenna technology, specifically phaser, is a good example. They spent millions and millions of dollars in developing the antenna, and then somebody from Korea bought the company because the company went bankrupt. So it will happen pretty much the same. I don't think that the assets in the space will go to waste. Somebody will take advantage of it and will run with it, just like with any other business. So I think consolidation is also probably something that will happen. Some of these operators and some of these large investments, not all of them will materialize or will produce a profit, but hopefully the big ones will make it, and even the big ones that fail, somebody will pick up the pieces and run with it. So I don't think much will change for us on the ground. We will just have to make sure that our antennas work and they are cost effective and operate the way the end users would want to use them. And there will always be somebody up there to provide services for these solutions. Okay,
Vagan, do you agree that you're pretty much insulated from the failure of the LEOs if it does happen? Do you agree with that?
No, well, we're not insulated, of course. No one is insulated from anything. The reverberations will be heard and felt throughout the industry. But I certainly agree with the overall sentiment that consolidation will take place. Certainly, some of the constellations will kind of quote unquote deorbit prior to the launch, and those 40,000 satellites that you're talking about Jose. Some of them exist only on paper, right? So and so they will not be launched. Some of the constellations may end up not being maintained. Of course we're not insulated, and we will feel those tremors. That said, I certainly agree that the effort will not go to waste. We will learn new approaches, both in development and productions and so on. And another run of the spiral, they will eventually, those technologies, whether it's virtualization or high frequency microwave amplification or phase array antennas, will see the light of the day. I'm an optimist in that regard.
Great. All right. Onur, final word on that question.
I completely agree with the colleagues here. So the names may change over the time, but definitely a few of them will be successful. And maybe I can add why I think so. Because first of all, compared to the past attempts, I mean, today the funds are available. The richest people on the planet are investing this. The governments are going into this. I mean, we know, and China, for example, doesn't matter what, somehow they will do this. Yeah. This is one thing. The technology is changed, and we have very new technologies like reusable platforms make it affordable. Now we can also, the satellite definition of the satellite is changing, becomes smaller, simpler, so people can do the mass production. So like other colleagues mentioned, I think it's just question of the time. It will happen. And as said, the real volumes will be driven from this development.
Great. All right. Well, we're at 11:56. We have 4 minutes to go. One more question before your closing statements. So ground segment all changed for a new Satcoms era. In 30 seconds, what needs to change, and what is the expected biggest change from one, from the industry on the ground segment, and two, from your company specifically? Onur, let's start with you, please.
I can just maybe highlight a couple of things which are discussed already. I mean, for to be really successful, I think operators and the ground terminal developers in general, we have to work hand in hand. So that is, I believe, the most important thing. As I said, in order to take the right decisions on the different trade-offs.
Okay, so it's the change is really the change in working together as opposed to, I guess, directly competing. Okay, Leslie?
I agree with Onur that there has to be cooperation between the satellite operators and the operators of constellations and the people like Onur's company and CCOM. We're developing antenna technology, and we have a very, very good cooperation, for example, with Telesat, where we are testing our antenna technology. And obviously the operator sees a value add from working with us and making sure that the antennas that we are going to be developing and marketing will definitely benefit the constellation operators. So there has to be cooperation. But at the end of the day, really, it will boil down to a product that is as cost effective. It works. It's affordable to the customer and does what the customer expects it for it to do, and provided similar, with the product has to be well supported, and it has to be able to deliver what the customer expects. So at the end of the day, you have to please the satellite operator or the constellation operator, but the ultimate customer is the one who will make your company successful or unsuccessful, because you will not be able to sell the product for whatever reason that may not work properly. It may be too expensive or whatever there is. So the business model is really not different than any other introduction of any new product, like an electric car or a new aircraft or anything else. It has to do what the customer who wants to buy it is expected to do, and it has to meet certain requirements.
Okay. So from Onur, it's the way things are being done, cooperate more. Leslie, if I'm hearing you correctly, the price point has to be there while maintaining high quality of service. Vagan, what has to change?
Oh, we need to deliver on those expectations, on those trends. And just to summarize those, it's open standards. It's focusing on the gateways, open standards, virtualization, higher frequency bands and higher rate, the right cadence or the rollout production capacity. But having said all that, I agree with all the speakers here. At the heart of everything that we do lies technology innovation. I think, as Honor said earlier, certain things were known since 1940, such as phase arrays and so on, and to Leslie's point as well. So the question then becomes, what can you actually implement and deliver? What can you do per 1 watt of consumed power for cubic inch of volume? And that's where innovation comes into play. And it underpins, technology innovation underpins everything we do. So that's the industry is very much a high-tech industry. We need to keep pushing, continue innovating, new generation of engineers coming on board. The story continues. We cannot stop. It's all about technology innovation.
Great. Tony?
I think Leslie stole my speech at the end here, actually. It's getting the technology in the right place at the right time at the right cost and working with partners that are going to drive the demand for those products. So, yeah.
Okay, so change the way business is done, cooperate more, hit the price point, technology innovation. Yes or no? Is this easily achieved? Honor, yes or no?
No. No.
What's the hiccup? What's the most challenging component of that?
Let me put it this way. If you look the whole industry, the whole, let's say, groundbreaking innovation comes, let's say, from the people who are new for the industry. So SpaceX, Amazon, and so on. So, but the know-how is actually kept by the existing players. So I think the way how they approach the problem, the mindset, I believe this is very important to change that one. Everything is there, but still the people, I mean, there is a big competition. As you ask, for example, India, it's a kind of, maybe not like China, but a kind of closed system. So the competition is very high. And if you can still continue with the, let's say, old habits, I think that could be one critical issue to lose the race. Otherwise, I think we should really react, and then I have to say the time is the most limited resource, and we have to really react and take decisions accordingly.
Leslie, yes or no? Is it easy to do?
No, it's
Implement
not.
all these changes?
It's very difficult to do. And any new technology, they say that pioneers have arrows in their backs. And I think that we are pioneers, and I'm sure that many of us have gone through many arrows. And you have to be able to survive with the arrows in your back. So I believe that it's a very difficult thing to do what we are doing. It's really a technology that is unknown. The constellations that are going up are all really relatively unknown. How they will perform, how many customers they will be able to support, how often, how long can you, for example, subsidize an antenna system before you run out of money, etc. So it's not easy to do. It's very, very difficult to do, but we have done it in many other areas of engineering and development, where we have developed products like cell phones and new cars, electric cars, and other things that were never developed before. But the process was definitely not easy, and this is not going to be easy either.
But it's going to be done.
It's going to be done, absolutely, and it will succeed at the end, for sure.
Okay, Vagan?
It's not easy, Jose, but it's very exciting. These are very exciting times, as exciting as I can remember them, just a throwback to 20, 25 years ago. So absolutely, very exciting times. Very happy to be part of this unfolding story. It's not easy, but we'll get there.
Great. And Tony, final word.
Takes a lot of talent. It takes more time than you think it's going to. It's costing more money than you expect it to. But I agree with everybody else. We will get there.
Great. Okay. All right. So we haven't, or I haven't even raised the market opportunity question, but I think everybody would agree it's massive. That's why everybody's playing here. Unless somebody disagrees, we'll conclude that there's a massive market opportunity. There's innovation that's taking place, lots of challenges to be dealt with, but as you all said, we will get there, it will be done. Am I missing anything, on our webinar in terms of the ground segment? What else has to be said that's not been mentioned anymore? Onur, please answer that question and provide your closing statement as well in terms of what you think of the new Satcoms era.
I think you summarized it very well, Jose. So as also other speakers mentioned, it's really exciting time. The importance is the satellite is actually appreciated by, let's say, other industries as well, because of reliable connectivity, because of now the new low latency. So that there are challenges, there is a high interest, so it will happen. But maybe what I can add is we have to work together, all partners, not only operator, but actually the people like Wagan, because at the end we are talking about the terminal, not the antenna or not the modem. Actually, this is the overall terminal. So we have to work together to optimize the overall system in terms of the performance and cost.
Great, thank you. Leslie?
I agree that this is a very exciting era, as Wagan mentioned, and I don't think a satellite has always been pushed in the background. It has never been a sexy type of a business solution, or most people didn't even know what satellites did. But I think over the last couple of years that has dramatically changed. There's unbelievable amount of money that is being poured into the industry, and I think that mankind will definitely benefit from having this kind of an attention given to a technology that has for long been a neglected or overlooked type of a resource, that it will and it will definitely contribute tremendously to everybody's well-being over the number of years as it evolves.
Just follow up to that, Leslie. You mentioned there's a lot of money being poured in, funds, and we agree, we've tracked it. And most of it is really going to the launch and the satellites themselves. Is the ground segment getting the same? I'm sure it's not the same, but is it getting the right amount of funds that it needs so that all these challenges and enabling, what service providers want to do is getting there? Is the funding there?
No, I don't think it. No, it's not even close. But I think that if you have the right technology, you can attract the funding. We are being offered funding all the time, and the Canadian government, for example, has been very generous in supporting this type of an effort and providing funding to universities that, in conjunction with industry, are able to develop this type of a technology. For example, we would have never been able to do this on our own because we are a relatively small company, but with the help of the University of Waterloo and the government of Canada that is funding some of this effort, we were able to, over the last 5 years, bring this technology to the forefront. But definitely the sexy aspect of it and the billions is not on the ground terminal side, it's in the constellations.
Great, okay. Wagan?
I look, so the funding is there. So whether it's enough, there's never enough funding, but if you believe in the markets, if you even believe in rational allocation of funds to the right opportunities in the markets according to the laws of free enterprise, and we have to agree that the funding is being allocated and is being made available as needed for the right sort of opportunities, the right sort of technologies. But there is never enough, right? We want to see more, we want to push more. Some of the funding that is being made available is not necessarily being made available to pure equipment and solution providers like all of us on this panel, right? A lot of those constellation builders, if you will, they take a lot of their work in-house, and we're not getting as much of it as we perhaps would have wanted. But again, that's part of the changing industry landscape, vertical integration. So we have to deal with those realities. And I just wanted to say in concluding remarks, so obviously we covered a lot of ground in this discussion, excuse upon. But at the same time, I would like to say that once again, like everyone else pointed out, these are exciting times, and I would like to make an appeal to all the engineers and marketeers and aspiring engineers to come on board, join us, join the industry, participate in what is being done now, and together we'll make it happen.
And I'd like to add the investment community too. Join us.
Absolutely, yes, that too, that too.
All right, Tony, final word, please.
Well, we alluded to this earlier. The sexy bit is still launching rockets and putting satellites up there, and the ground equipment is trailing behind that. But the realization, I think, has hit the industry, and I agree with everybody else, this is probably the most exciting times in our industry since the 60s, when lots of money was being poured into the space race. The realization has hit that we need to sort out the ground segments, and I'm seeing funding coming through, never enough, but it is happening, and it's no good having a constellation not being able to receive a signal and send a signal back. So, yeah, as we said earlier, it's going to happen. I agree with this. Let's get more young engineers into our industry, and let's encourage more folks to get involved in space.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. Very lively discussion. I've had a lot more questions, but we didn't get to it. We have a lot of audience questions as well. This brings us to the conclusion of this webinar. All questions we did not manage to answer during the live program will be responded to in writing and posted next to the video on the GVF website. You can watch the recording of this and previous webinars on gvf.org. Join us for the next webinar sponsored by Chimera, Satellite Industry Trends, A Year to Remember, a year ahead on Wednesday, 1st December at 10 a.m. US Eastern, 3 p.m. UK time. Once again, thank you so much to the GVF, and thank you so much to the panelists for a very exciting and enlightening discussion. And good luck to the industry and to your individual companies. Thank you very much.